Welcome to Between Two Psychs, a podcast where two psychologists and board-approved supervisors deep dive into many of the questions and challenges that provisional psychologists and early career therapists face in everyday practice, during training, throughout the internship, and beyond as they progress into working more independently. Your hosts, Isabelle Tombleson and Claire Trevitt, talk about a range of topics specifically relating to psychologists and therapists who are just starting out. Hello, everybody. This is Claire bringing you a solo episode of the podcast today. And I'm calling this an open letter to all therapists who have experienced a difficult session. And I'm assuming that actually this will apply to all therapists because we've all been there at some point or another. So maybe it just felt tense. Maybe you walked away questioning yourself, wondering if you said the wrong thing or if you said enough at all or whether you did enough. Maybe your client brought emotions that were just very difficult for you to hold. Maybe they didn't engage. And maybe you're just wondering whether therapy is even helping. So hard sessions happen. And when they do, it's very, very easy for us to blame ourselves. But I just want to take a breath and look at this a little bit differently. So believe me, I know that feeling. The doubt, the voice in your head that whispers, did I mess it up? Should I have handled it differently? All of those questions that will come back to you doubting your competence as a therapist. But I just want to say this, just because a session felt hard, it doesn't actually mean that it went wrong. Sometimes therapy feels difficult because something important is shifting. So your client may have left quite unsettled, they may be quiet, they may be frustrated, but that doesn't mean that the session wasn't meaningful because sometimes growth is uncomfortable. It can be really messy and it doesn't always feel good in the moment. So I can remember some sessions where I've perhaps said something to a client that may have felt really confronting and they haven't taken it that well. And maybe it's taken them a couple of weeks or sometimes even months for them to come back and say, I remember that session when you said this to me. I didn't like it, but actually I really needed to hear that. Now, sometimes we don't always get that validation, but I'm sure at the time, after that session, I probably thought, oh my goodness, what have I sent this client away with? Are they even going to come back to me? Because I could really tell that what I had said had really stirred things up, but it needed to be said. Sometimes, no matter what we do though, the outcome isn't in our hands. So there will be sessions when a client just isn't ready for the work. Maybe defenses are very high. Maybe they really either feel shut down or maybe, maybe they lash out at something that we say. And it's not necessarily a reflection of your skill. It may just be a part of their process. They may be sitting in a very, very difficult place and not quite sure where to go, but also may not be ready to take on what we have to offer them. Because yes, we are given the skills to work with clients and support them through very difficult and challenging times. But that doesn't mean that the client is necessarily going to be ready and receptive to what we have to offer. And if the client isn't ready or isn't receptive, then it's going to be very, very difficult for that work to be done. And we're probably going to have very, very little impact despite our best intentions and maybe despite the skills and the training that we have. Sometimes clients just come in, we feel quite confident with that presentation. It's something that's quite familiar for us and it's something that we feel that we have the skills to work with. But if the client can't take it in, there's not much that we can do. Sometimes clients bring very big emotions and holding that space can be really quite exhausting. sitting with pain, anger, grief, trauma, distress, agitation. It's a lot. And even when we do it well, it can sometimes leave us feeling quite drained or unsure if we did enough. We can feel quite helpless sometimes in sessions, particularly if the emotions are very strong or if there are some very, very challenging issues that the client is working through that we can't necessarily help them resolve immediately. Sometimes it's a much longer term process, or sometimes something has happened for that client that isn't fixable and they need someone to bear witness to that. And it isn't our job to fix our clients or to take away their pain. It's to be in there with them while they're in the thick of it. But that can also be quite challenging. And sometimes we want to do more and we feel like we should be doing more, even though we can't. And that can be really quite draining. And sometimes we are not as regulated as we want to be. Ideally, we would have a great night's sleep. We would feel fresh and we would feel calm and we would feel ready for every day that we see our clients. But life happens and we are human. So sometimes we're carrying something heavy of our own. Sometimes we didn't have a great night's sleep. Sometimes we've got things going on in life that can create feelings in us. Sometimes we can feel reactive, or sometimes we can feel flat. Sometimes the client might say something that really triggers us in some way, and that can be quite difficult to hold when we're not expecting it. Maybe you said something and you wish that you'd said it differently. That happens to all of us. Our words get jumbled, or sometimes maybe just misunderstood. Or maybe we just reflect on it later and think, actually, I could have handled it in a different way. And that is going to happen for all of us. But that doesn't make you a bad therapist. It makes you a person. It makes you human. So if you make a mistake, you can repair it. Therapy is a relationship, and relationships allow for repair. And in many ways, some of our clients have not had the best relationships. And so for us to model that and for us to be willing to own mistakes and repair mistakes can actually be quite healing for our clients. So sometimes some good can come from making mistakes. Not that we make them intentionally, and I certainly wouldn't advocate for that. But sometimes the mistakes that we make can actually take us to a much deeper connection with our clients and can sometimes be quite beneficial. So all is not lost. So if something doesn't land, or you've missed something important, you've said the wrong thing, just name it and be honest about that, because it can make the relationship stronger. If we can own our things and our mistakes, then our clients may feel more comfortable being able to do that for themselves. It will make them more comfortable with us and hopefully more comfortable with others, knowing that mistakes can be repaired. So we can learn from these things and we can grow from these things. And that's actually how we become better therapists, not by being perfect, not by doing everything right all of the time, because that's never going to happen, but by reflecting and adjusting and just continuing to show up and be who we are and be prepared to own what we bring to the sessions. So, if you are replaying a session in your mind right now, wondering if you failed, just take a pause, take a breath, and just remember that not every hard session means something went wrong. You don't have to be perfect to be effective, and you are learning and growing, and you're showing up for your clients. And sometimes that is enough. So if this episode resonated for you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And that's all for now, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps others find the show. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Between Two Psychs for more updates and resources. For more information and to explore everything we offer, head over to our website, betweentwopsychs.com.au. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.